Do you want to save some money on your electricity bill using Home Assistant? Well, I've got one way of doing it, so in this video, I'll show you how. So yes, we're back in Home Assistant. Here's my usual dashboard, in this case the water. But in this video, I want to go through a few techniques of saving some money. I've recently changed electricity company from one that was peak off-peak pricing. So from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. was peak pricing and the rest was off-peak. And now instead I have dynamic pricing. And it's with a company that's based here in Melbourne called Amber. So you might have a different electricity company provider. Obviously, you might not be in Australia, nor you might not be using Amber. But in this case, I'm going to show you how to use Amber to sort of update your Home Assistant dashboards and be a bit cleverer about how to use electricity. So now I have Amber on my phone as an app, which is this one. So right now it's costing 49 cents per kilowatt hour. And in Australia, that's a reasonably high price. I don't know about other countries, and you can put in your comments how much you pay for electricity. But sometimes it's at like 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and sometimes it's at 60 with this app. The problem is that I have to open the app to know how much the price of electricity is right now. Instead, I would like to see it without opening the app, so in Home Assistant, and I would like to improve some of my automations to use electricity when the price is low. So let's do that. So I'm going to start by using the Amber integration. So this is a first-party integration now in Home Assistant, which is very cool. So it is in here, add integration, and I just write Amber, and there it is. Now, sometimes they're not first-party integrations into Home Assistant, but they might be in the community store as well. There might be other ways of doing it. Now, in order to use this, I have to go to app.amber.com.au developers and get an API key. So let's do that. So you can see here that I'm now signed in, and I'm going to enable developer mode for Amber, and then I can just generate an API token. You can see down here there is also the API. There's the various calls you can make to this REST API, but I just need a token. Right? I'm just going to generate an API token. So I'm going to call this one Home Assistant because that's where we're using it. And then I'm going to copy this. And as always, with many of these token sites, once I leave this page or refresh it, I will no longer be able to see this token. So I can't get it again. So make sure you make a note of it. As it also says here, remember, take note of your API tokens. Now they will disappear once you refresh the page. But I have a token now. I can go back into Home Assistant and I can paste that token in and submit it. And that will now link me, or my meter, to that account or to that integration point. So yeah, the NMI is the actual meter that's in here on the farm. So that has a number. So we're gonna associate that with this integration. Success. Create a configuration from Melwood. So we now have 8 entities straight off the bat. And let's have a look at those. So we have a feed-in forecast, feed-in price descriptor, general forecast, general price descriptor, and then we have these price spike and renewables. Now, if we want to know what they are, we go to the docs as always, because the Amber docs are pretty good. So you can see we have the general. This is the channel that records all your power usage from your lights and appliances. Right, we might need that. Control load. So again, if you go back here, we have general controlled. That's actually not in here. Interesting. So the docs don't quite match up. Anyway, we can make sense of it. And then we have a feed-in price. So that's my solar panels. And then we have the current electricity price. We have a forecasted price for the next 12 hours. You get every half hour, I believe. At least that's what the app shows. And then we have a descriptor of the price. Sure, I'm not sure what that gives us. Price spike, a binary sense that indicates when the current price is over $3 a kilowatt hours. Well, that is high. Like I would say here, 50, 60 cents per kilowatt hour is when I start going, ooh, that's really expensive now. And then we can get a percentage of renewables energy currently in the grid. So those are the entities that we get for this integration. So let's use them. And I think I'm going to do the first bit, which is going to be on the dashboard. So I've created another view, another dashboard here for electricity. Has a little lightning icon here. Now, I know there is a whole energy dashboard here, but that's a completely different video, and I don't even have enough things to make that worthwhile in my case, so I'm just going to have a simple view here, just so you know. I'm aware of that exists. So first, let me just show you a little quirk here that we have to deal with. So I'm going to add a card just to this here. I'm going to just add an entities, and no, we don't want these, but thank you. All the sensors start with Merlewood, as we saw before when we created them. So if I could spell Merlewood underscore, and we have in here feed in forecast, feed in price, etc., etc. So I'm going to go with general price. That's great. Right now, it's the morning, roughly, and it's 18 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, that's great. All right, that's really good. Right now, it's a good price. Now, I want the forecast as well, right? So let's just try and add the forecast, and I'll show you what happens. So general forecast, we just get 17. Yes, that is the forecast for the next half hour, but I want all of the forecasts. If I go back to the Amber Electric API here, I can actually call prices here. So if I go in here and I filled in the right values here, I can execute this as a test and see what I get. I get many more values. So what's going on? Why am I only getting one? Well, it took me a little while to figure this one out, but let's just save this. We'll just keep that here. If I go to my developer tools in Home Assistant and I go to states, I can see that sensor. So the Merlewood general forecast, right? That's the one I'm interested in. And I can see here that the state or the value is 17, which is what we saw. But then there's a bunch of attributes that comes with it. And that is actually what we're interested in. So we see here we have a state class, which is measurement, sure. And then we have forecasts. And there are 24 hours of half-hour interval forecasts in this. Those are the values I want. In particular, I actually want this NEM date or the time. So that's the time. And then I want the per kilowatt hour price or the forecasted price, right? So those are the two values I want. So it's a little bit tricky. We have to go into the attributes of the sensor, not just the value of the sensor, because the value of the sensor only gives us the first one. You see 17, it's the same as here, 17. So we need to create a card which looks at the attributes rather than just the value. So let's do that with that in mind, okay? So I'm gonna go to my dashboard. In particular, I want the kitchen dashboard because that's where I initially want to place these values, and you can see there's not much here. So there's two cards I want. I want the current price and I want the forecast. Right, so let's edit this and we're gonna add a card. Now the first one I want is just a gauge because I just want a gauge that shows me the current price, right? Now let me just go in here and I'm just gonna cheat a little bit and copy across this here. So you don't have to sit and watch me. So in this case, I have $1 is the maximum. Green is less than 30 cents. Yellow is 30 to 50, and red is anything over 50 cents, right? So right now you can see I get a nice gauge, and that will just update in real time. Pretty simple. I like that. So we're going to save that, and then that just goes on the board here. And then there's the other one, which is the trickier one. Now this one, I'm going to jump a little bit, but I'll explain to you what I've done. I actually used ChatGPT to help me out. So if you haven't used that for Home Assistant stuff, it's great. It'll give you a whole bunch of stuff around YAML and Markdown and whatnot and help you out. It's a lot quicker than trying to Google it. So I'm going to use a Markdown card, which is this one here. And as it says, it's just Markdown. I don't need any of the placeholder stuff. And I'll copy in what I did, and then I'll explain to you how that works. All right. So here's my forecast. I have a bolded time and then the value in cents, etc. every half hour for the next 6 hours. That's all. I don't, any further than that, I don't really need it, even though it gives me 24 hours. So you can see in the markdown here, this is just markdown syntax. So I'm first setting a variable called forecasts, and I'm getting just the forecast sensor value out with the attributes that we need, right? And then we say, well, if we're getting anything, just a little bit of a check here. If there is a value in forecast, otherwise it will crash. And I'll go for forecast, and I'll do 12 iterations, as in 6 hours, right? So 12 half-hour intervals is what I want. And then my loop says, well, I want to split it. Because I know the date format is exactly the same every time, I can split it up. So I say, oh, the first T, and then I want to split it. I want to add whatever comes after that, minus the last 5 characters. All right, so that's the sort of split I'm doing, which gives me just hour colon minutes. And then we want to add that with the forecast per kilowatt hour price, right? So we want just the time and the hour and minute, the time, and then the forecast per kilowatt hours, which is that. And then I just put 2 bars here because that makes it easy to read. So what I'm doing is I'm going into the forecast attributes. So for each forecast in forecast, right? And this is how you iterate over the attributes. So I can go back and I could show you here. Let me just hang on. Let me just show you here. So there's the NEM date. That's the one I wanted, which is the localized time for me. And then I want the per kilowatt hour value as well. Whoops. So that's just the forecast come out as text. Now, if you have a better way of doing it with a different card, please let me know. I am not a visual designer person. This works for me, just the text, that's fine. I can read that, it updates in real time. So then we have, that's our cards. So now we have our, on the kitchen dashboard. So this is the dashboard I'm using on the tablet in the kitchen. If you don't know about the custom dashboards for Home Assistant, go and check out my video there where I install 3 of them. Now, this is all great. I have now information, but what do we do with that information? We should probably do something with it. Now, it's great. We can see what the price is and we can manually go and switch things on and off, but Home Assistant is all about automation. So let's create some automations. So I'm going to use Node-RED, and if you're not familiar with Node-RED, I've linked a video there about how to set it up, how to use it, but it's a very visual way of creating automations in, well, not just Home Assistant, in other projects as well, other platforms, but it works with Home Assistant. So I'm using it here because I think it makes sense. So here's a previous one I've made for some lighting. I have now created another tab called heating, and I'm going to create some automations here based on the electricity price that we now have in Home Assistant. So first thing I need is obviously to find out what the electricity price is. I'm going to use the current state node here. And if I update that, I can give it a name. I said get electricity price. And then I need an entity ID. Obviously that's the price. So that's the Merlewood general price. So that's the price right now is what we need, right? And I want to say, well, if it's higher than something, so higher than, say, I'm going to go with 40 cents, then I want to do something. In this case, I want to turn off things, but we'll get to that. So I have that here as my node, and then I get 2 outputs here. I get a true and a false. So true is if it's higher than 40 cents. So if it's higher than 40 cents, I want to call a service. And the service I'm calling is my Sensibo aircon. So I'm going to aircon controller. So I'm going to say turn off, oops, media room heater. If you're not familiar with the Sensibo device as well, they're really cool. They're sort of a out of the box, ready to plug and play, go aircon controller. Really easy to set up. I made a video on that, of course, which is linked there. But it's I really like them. I have 2, 3 of them now. I can't remember. So the domain here I want is climate. This is why I like Node-RED. It's really easy to find things. And the service I want is turn off. I want to turn off the aircon. And the device is actually just called media room. Like that. That's all I have to do. Click done. And then I just need to drag a little connector here saying that if the electricity price is over 40 cents, turn off the media room heater. Now that's super simple, right? That's really simple. Get price, turn off heater. What about the other way? What if it's really low? I probably want to turn on heaters, possibly. I mean, let's do that. So we're going to get the current state again down here, because we're going to get the price again, because all we know is that it's higher than 40 or not, but we want it to be really low. Otherwise, we don't want to turn on things automatically. So we're going to again say get electricity price. Ooh, that's a hard word. Electricity. There we go. Price. And again, this is the Merlewood general price. And we want to say, well, if it's less than, well, what do we say? 10 cents? Like if it's really low, right? Then we want to do stuff. So again, I want to connect that here. And we get another 2 outputs. So we just need the true in this case. And then I want to call a service. Actually, what I can do, I can just copy this one. It's really handy. Node-RED, you can just copy that. Now get another node. And obviously we just got to adjust it slightly and say turn on media room heater. And we just change that to turn on. And that's it. There we go. Now, that's we're probably missing a step, right? Because, well, what if it's really warm in there already? I don't want to turn on the heater, even if it's cheap. So let's just add a step in here. So if I do this, you see a cool trick here. I can then get another current state because we want the temperature. I can just plonk it in the middle, and Node-RED will just put it in the middle. Isn't that lovely? So let's configure this one. So we say get media room temp, and this will again be media room. There we go. Climate media room. And if we want to say that is less than, say, 15 degrees, that's Celsius. In Fahrenheit, that's a different number. Then we click done, and now we have a flow. Now, if it's over 15 degrees, well, we probably want to turn it off, don't we? Yeah, because we heat it up to about 15. That's reasonable if someone's not there. If we're in there, we could probably turn it on manually, but that's okay. Now, there's one more thing I need here. So we get the electricity price. If it's really high, we turn off the media room heater. If it's not, then we check if it's really low. We get the temperature in the media room, and then we turn it on or off. But what triggers this? So I usually use these inject nodes here, and this is just an inject node. Like it's just, we can just call this every 10 minutes, because every 10 minutes is probably often enough. And then you can say here, repeat, at interval every 10 minutes. Done. So now this triggers, I better just connect that. There we go. So now this triggers every 10 minutes, it's going to check. So what we've done now is we've taken the electricity price in real time. We've got that from Amber using the Amber integration. And then we set up some cards so we can see it visually, and we can make informed decisions about electricity usage based on what I see. But we also create an automation, which is every 10 minutes, check if the price is really high, turn off heater. If it's really low, turn on the heater if it's cold enough in that room. And that now means that I can have much more fine-grained control over my electricity usage and hence costs. But I can also have more comfort because I can heat things, in this case, when they're cold, and it's cheap to do so. So I'm using all the information I have both as visual but also as automations. And that, to me, is the power of Home Assistant and home automation platforms. I love it. I think that's fantastic. I'm going to do a lot more of these. Now, put in the comments what automations you would use this for. Like, how would you configure things if you knew the electricity prices? Or let me know of other ways that you might use it in your setup. And as always, if you do enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing, because that is how you support the channel the best way and let me do a lot more videos like this. So thanks for that. I hope this was really useful. I think it's really cool. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Do you want to save some money on your electricity?